So, repurposing rage or just anger, for some of us, like myself, it's feelings of wrath. The thing about it is that it does take practice, and it takes practice to really surrender, right? So, some things that still bother me are regarding basically validation. It all comes down to validation. I mean, that's how I understand it now. So, like, like for example, like I had a friend who I was hanging out with, and we were talking, and I can tell he wasn't really like present. He analyzes presence. He tends to do that, and that's his journey, right? That's the whole thing. It's when people are at a certain level of consciousness, and for those who are not, these things are new to you, these words are unfamiliar to you. It just means that when they're unconscious, it means that they're holding on to things from the past, and they're doing it sort of like unconsciously. It's just kind of like this automatic reaction thing. A lot of times people who don't know that they're invalidating others is when they're responding right away. They're giving advice right away, especially unsolicited advice. They're reacting right away, or they're reacting, period, or they have something to say right away. It has a feeling of defensiveness, has a feeling of like, I have to be right, or I don't understand. Like it is, there's always some sort of like questioning, right? It's questioning, because they themselves have these, it's like wounding, basically, right? Some of you have heard, hurt people hurt people. That's the thing about the ego. Ego is separate. The ego wants to separate, right? It's not to say that we shouldn't have to neglect and avoid and reject and deny the ego. The ego is there for a purpose. It's survival. But the thing is, we're headed towards this, this direction where humans are now going towards more of a higher elevated consciousness. But what that really means is just we're switching our perception of reality, and we're seeing that we're not going to adjust to and also go back to and also live in life that is obsessed only with the reality that feels this reality, this physical reality, is the only reality. Or rather, that it's because it's the only reality that it is done, and that's it. Right? I mean, it ties into other things like religious things like hell and heaven and all that stuff, right? And this is why they get triggered. There are people who do get triggered. They get triggered by, we all get triggered, of course, right? But they get triggered by these things because what happens is that they themselves also feel invalidation. They feel like what they've gone through, what they believe in, what they're doing, what the life that they're living is kind of like it's perceived as if it's wrong. Well, there's no right or wrong. It's just they have this duality mindset, right? And it's okay to have a duality mindset because it's just part of the journey, right? Unconditional love, or basically source energy, universe, God, whatever, is all-encompassing. Now, there's still a lot of people who will reject that, and that's totally fine. That's their journey. But they know within, and when there's a rejection, there's a feeling of tightness. There's a feeling of like, there's no oneness. There's no connection anymore. It feels really disconnected, right? We're so used to living in a boxed world that everything is in a box because that's what the ego is. It's in a box because it's separate, right? If you can imagine like a piece of thing and seeing that it's all eternal, and then it goes whoop and put in this little box as if it's like you're isolating yourself. That's basically what isolation is. You're isolating yourself and you're putting yourself in this box. So therefore you're blocking everything else. So therefore you start to believe over time you start to believe over time that that is your reality. But in reality, really what it is, it's never been that way. It's just there's a separation because there was this growth and this belief of like, I need to separate because, I mean, there's a long story behind it, but for many, many reasons, separation happens because it wants to experience its own universe within the universe itself, right? And that's part of the process. So there's no right or wrong here. I mean, everybody goes through that. Some people become like, these wrathful gods, or these people who are tyrants, and they want to kill everyone, and they want to murder and rape and pillage and kill children, eat people, hurt the planet. Especially when, what I'm saying is this energy of like fearful behavior. It's unconscious, fearful, like very separated behavior. And I mean, on a lighter note, I mean, there are people who do correct, and people who, they do it unconsciously. My friend was like doing that, and it got triggered again a little bit today. I was feeling it. I was just feeling it in sensation. I was feeling it somewhere around this area, the chest area, but also kind of like here in this neck, as if it's this area I could feel it. Now you're probably wondering, well, how do you feel it? Well, you don't just feel it. Because it's the thing is, we're so used to this this chaotic mindset of like, I gotta do. You see what I mean? So it's insane. It just stuck there, and we think that's what it means to have a life, to have success, to have this and this and this and this and this and this. We've identified with that so much that sometimes it's so hard to get out of it. But eventually, you get tired of it, right? You get tired of it. You get tired of the whole, I feel like there's no purpose here anymore, right? And that's what it is. Purpose goes beyond that. It checks you beyond that, right? So it also comes down to, there's people who will not give you the time of day because they're very stuck in the separated world. They don't want to see your opinion. They don't want to see your experience. They don't want to see that, what you're doing is really, you're looking also for validation, because they themselves feel like it's unfair. The ego says, like, it's unfair. Why the fuck should I give you validation? Validation rather when I never got it. So it's not fair. So fuck you. Right? So that's what happens. It goes down to the lower vibrational energies. It goes back into separation, and it feels like it's a lone thing. And it acts as if it's like this brave and all-knowing and righteous and, all those things like I got. So therefore there's this correction that happens. There's this response that happens right away. There's a reaction. There's unsolicited advice. It doesn't come from a place of expansive, very loving, light, very unified sort of energy. If you felt that before, it's this feeling of like, I haven't really felt completely, but I get this is just a sort of like, you get goosebumps actually when you notice that you're connected. It feels this connection of like, you're surrounded with this warm blanket of like, I don't know, I felt it many times. I'm not saying I feel it completely, but I mean, I felt it, and it's not to say that it's like, it's getting there, because I have my own shit. So, but what I know is that when it comes to stuff like this, when it comes to invalidation, it triggers a lot of hubris in myself. So I get feelings of rage and wrath. It's really like heavy stuff. Like, it's like, before it was way worse. Before, I just wanted to fucking annihilate and destroy and obliterate all universes. Literally, like, that's what I felt like. It was like all the tyrants on the planet put together, and even more than that, times eternity. That kind of is like really like extreme wrath, right? So when it comes to this kind of stuff, I understand anger. I totally understand anger because it's pain. Now when I see people who are angry, I feel like this, it's not pity. It's like this feeling of like, oh, I know that's familiar. So you probably have seen it before that, this is why it's good to meditate. It's good to, but sometimes on a conscious level. So let's take it to something where you're aware of it. For me, what I do is like I ask myself, is this worth my peace? Is this genuine peace to solve something, to be right, to defend? You know, is it worth it? And I'm just like, nope, at least not anymore. So what I do is like I really surrender to it. There will be times where you're in a situation where you can't get out of it. You can't just meditate in front of the person, right? It's not even about meditation. It's about like being in the present moment, which is in itself is actually the essence of awareness. Is the essence of meditation, right? So, so really, what I do is like I allow for the silence. I'll post a link below at the end of the video. Hopefully, I remember it. I'm going to put this here. The silence thing. You know, sometimes the best tool you can have, or the best thing you can do, is be quiet about it. When I say be quiet, I don't mean to don't really say anything, but more like observe the sensations going through your body. And even if you feel like it's not going there, use the silence to kind of like, because this is what I've done, where I just like sit here and be like, and I see this like this is seething, boiling rage inside, right? But I don't feed the flames by getting into it. I go like, I literally surrender, even to the idea of the fact that it's like, I'm powerless right now. Right? It's kind of like when you cry a lot, like you really, really cry a lot, and you really cry a lot, and you cry and you cry and you cry and cry and cry and cry and cry until finally just you come into this silence, this sort of like peace that it's like, oh, it dissipated. And to some people, it might feel like it's like it's a sort of like, what was that story? What was I telling myself? Oh, I'm actually okay. So same thing, right? But it takes practice, and this is what meditation helps with. But you know, it's not really, to be honest, about the meditation. It's about the presence. So when you're in the present moment and you're observing the moment and you're literally surrendering to it, you might see some thoughts, might see some sort of, not necessarily see them per se with your eyes, but you get to sort of sense that it's like, okay. You know, it's almost like you're getting this voice, this message that it's like, you sit with it, you surrender through it, right? So I was just going through a live thing with this program that I'm in, and it's Aaron Doughty. So he was having this live video, and there was this guy who came in, and then one thing that struck me was he said, maybe the pain is showing you that you no longer want to be motivated by the pain or with pain. And so it comes down to the whole pain. It's pain, right? Because that's what anger is. Anger or pain and all that stuff. There's as our TS1 puts it, there's cover emotions. We can go deeper into it by allowing the emotions to just be. It's like you can't stop a flowing river from flowing. You can't stop fire from burning. You have to let it die. Sometimes, a lot of times as humans, we want to solve things. We want to, because we're so, it's kind of, the way I see it is it's tied exactly to that boxing thing, the separation thing. Because we're wanting to solve things, what happens is that we want to get from point A to point Z. Right? Boom. And that's it. And that's the reality. A is the borderline, is this side of the border, and Z is the other side of the border, and it's just one thing. But energy is energy. Energy will go from this to this, to this, to this. Presence in itself is linked directly to, in awareness, presence is linked directly to why these energies exist in the first place. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but to me it does, because I sense it right away. It's just like, oh, okay, I totally got it. You know, it's like, you know, have you ever wondered why sometimes you're like, why is it the heart is beating? Why does the heart beat? And why does the brain still work even after death? Why is it that this? Why? How does this form? Like, what is the function? Why do things move? Why do things die? Why do things live? Why do things grow? Why do things do this? What really? Like, you see the underlying functions and the actual, like, you see what I mean? It's that thing. It's that intelligence. We call it intelligence, but really what it is just that thing. It is. You know, in Christianity, you call it, what is it? I am that I am, right? That's exactly what it is. Source energy, it's in us, right? So that's why. So, for me, I stopped listening to the labels and the stories. I mean, I still hear it, but I just allow for it. And so what I do is I go within, and then by allowing the without, meaning I draw my attention, and I draw my attention, and I bring my attention towards, starting with the body, and then the breath, and then, you know, you feel this rate, and you're going like it's heavy in the chest. Usually it's the chest area. Sometimes it's stomach, depending on you as a person. It could be the back, it could be the head, it could be many places, right? And you just go. And you really, really surrender. As if literally like you dying. Allow yourself to die. The ego will resist so much. The ego will resist and be like, no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And it wants to resist, and it wants to solve it. It wants to get out. It wants to escape. It wants to solve it. It wants to run away. It wants to get angry. It wants to retaliate. It wants to be correct. It wants to live. It wants to survive. It wants to do all those things and many more, right? But again, remember, it goes back to that essence of like that so-called intelligence of what that is. It's, but by surrendering, it becomes a sort of thing. I don't know. For me, that's how it is. Really, what I'm doing here is that when it comes to these videos, I'm really just sharing with you guys. For those who watch other videos, other gurus, so to speak, or people, all they really do is sharing with you. And you know, you share things yourself to other people, right? And then sometimes they come to you and they're like, oh, what do you, they ask for your advice, or they ask for your help, right? Because it feels good, right? Because it feels like this connection, right? So one of the other tricks that I do is like when it comes to the silent stuff is when people invalidate you, and usually it's done unconsciously. Most likely it is unconsciously, because they invalidate, because it's an invalidation is like bring you down. And they're doing it unconsciously, and they don't realize that they're doing it, because that's what they know. That's their level of consciousness, their level of awareness. It's not knowing, it's their level of, you know, it's not knowing. Their level of like what they're saying. Are they aware that they're saying it? Are they, you know, it's not about the thoughts either. A lot of times there are people out there who will bully you, they're not doing it on purpose, and even if they are, it's still unconscious, because it's separation. It's like you against me against the world. So by repurposing this anger, this rage, or even wrath, you can actually eventually allow for it to happen. And I know this is extreme, but even when someone's trying to cut your head off, and when someone shoots you in the head, because there's this fear, the ego thinks it's like this form is the reality. That's not it. This form, what they're doing is that it just creates more karma. It creates more separation, right? Eventually, that separation will have had enough. That's the purpose of separation, so that it realizes that it is united. So that it is, you realize that it's one. You can't know really one until you're separate, right? Once you become aware, once you start to realize, like, oh, I'm this little thing separate from the whole thing. It's like a fragmental piece of a whole, like, say, whatever it is. It could be food, it could be a piece of rock, it could be for a piece of wood, or your limb from your finger. Once that finger realizes it's like it's this aware of itself, then it realizes it's separate. But then it never realized that it wasn't there in the first place, part of the whole. right? Same thing with this body. This form is this manifestation of the separation, and that's part of the whole process. It is okay to have separation, because through the separation, that's how we know, that's how we get unification. That's how we know it's oneness, right? So again, going back to the whole thing, repurposing the anger, however it is, to whatever degree it is, you surrender to death, to the whole thing. And I know the feeling of surrendering, as if it's like, I'm literally like, I feel like I might as well die right now. It's not being negative, it's just, that's what it is. It's really acknowledging that it's like, death is a gift. Death is what will help you rebirth, right? If you've ever seen the movie Dark Phoenix, if you follow the series of the X-Men, I love it. Like, I love X-Men. So the story of like how Jean Grey, at least the second batch, the newer, when they went back in time and there's just new characters, so it's not the old Jean Grey from the original trilogy, the other one. So Dark Phoenix is the latest one of the X-Men, I think. I mean, besides Wolverine stuff. So she has this sort of like fire inside her, right? It's absolute rage, right? It's destructive energy. But from destruction comes life. Death, life. Death, life. Death, life. Right? So that's the whole process. I don't know if you understand this right now, but you know, because it's the mental mind, it's boxed in. It cannot hold in the information outside of it. That's the thing about the skin in the body and the form, and that it has its limits, and that's okay, because as we elevate, as we expand our awareness, as it changes, as it shifts, you'll start to realize, it's like, oh, that makes sense. You don't have to understand completely right now, right? So the purpose is really, this whole thing, this video is really about just like repurposing all that anger, the rage, and the wrath by surrendering and dying to it. So what I'll do is I'll send also link in at the end about the silence video, but also I'm actually making the video on a surrender meditation. So hope you enjoy it. I hope it helps. But really the key is really you, right? You not as a separate entity, but you as like this separate entity that can realize it is one. But you can only do it by surrendering to it, and surrendering and surrendering and surrendering and surrendering. So remember that surrendering is not really about doing nothing. Surrendering is just allowing for, you're giving over, not giving up. You're giving over. That's I heard that from Gabrielle Bernstein. She said that. So, right? Because that's the root of, I feel like the root of validation comes from that self-worth. And the reason we have low self-esteem or no worth is because we come to believe that we don't have it. Worth comes from the surrendering to the essence and that intelligence I said, from where the source of it, like where the source of it is, because the source of it is the source of creation itself. So therefore, that's where you'll find the oneness. You have to surrender to it. So there isn't a goal here. There isn't any destination here. It's the journey. That's where the present moment is. The journey and the present moment are one and the same, right? And so, but being present, of course, is part of the whole. You know, you bring awareness to the body. You bring awareness to the body. Allow for it. Let it happen. Let it happen. And feel it. And then allow for it to happen. And then you'll get all these, you might even get images. You might get these thoughts. Allow for it. Allow for it. Now, there's another part to this whole thing where apparently it's called the revision process by Neville Goddard. But there's also TS1's completion process. I'm not there to do that. I've done a bit of the completion process, but I'm not, I guess you can say, certified or licensed to do that. So the whole point of the video is allowing for the images to come through. If you feel called to do something about the memory, allow for it. Really allow for it. That's the whole key. That's the whole thing, right? Because we're so afraid of allowing. We're so afraid of that. And I understand where that comes from. Trust me, I totally get it. Because there's resistance to it myself. But where I am in my journey is like I'm allowing for things more and more and more and more and more. It's a growing process. It's a growing thing. It's this thing. It's like a seed that was planted. It's still growing. It's still growing. It's still growing. Trees that look like the trees are mature. They're still growing. Life doesn't end just because we think life ends. No, life is not just life as in living life. Life is in death too. Life, death, right? Death is a transition. Okay? So it's you cannot live without the other. That's not the way the universe works. So when it comes to, again, going back to the whole thing, there will be people who don't validate you. Comes down to that as well. And whatever it is, whatever your reason. For me, it's about not being validated in terms of like the things I'm sharing, all those things. And I'm not going to say that it's emotionally okay. I don't like it. But at the same time, that's also the story. So really, I allow for it. So the other thing too is that you don't just allow for things like that too. If you want, what you can always do is do what feels right for you. But that means that the message is showing you is that, for me, what it's showing me is that being invalidated is no longer something that I want. So I surround myself with people who are very, very encouraging, empowering, right? Not disempowering, not discouraging, not invalidating, all those things. And those I stay away from. Not to say that you completely cut them out from your life. You can if you want to, if you feel really called to it. Because if it's like, especially if it's too much, especially if it's like abuse, okay, abuse, rape, okay, all those things. Oh yeah, by all means, that means you need to cut it off. That something needs to happen there. Okay, that's part of the repurposing of the whole energy of anger. Anger is also initiative. Anger is assertiveness. Anger is also part of change. But beyond that, it's there's a whole like transmutational aspect of it. Okay, so I'll share a link below, and or the video after this. At the end of this video, you'll see the video in silence and also the surrender meditation. Hopefully that helps. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later.